Hey everyone, welcome to this second video in my Errant exercises for Banjo video series. So the idea with this video series is to take like a musical concept of some sort and try to give you exercises to push it from like a theoretical, analytical place into a place where it's intuitive and you feel like you can kind of speak with it. So this is kind of a special lesson on this because we're going to be using, what did I say in the guitar one? Using muscles much more important than our fingers here. So what I want you to do is put your banjo down. Don't pick it up until I say you can. We're going to be doing a lesson I call Finding Chords 101 or Harmonic Ear Training 101. All right, so banjo down. No other instrument, right? This is big. Okay, so what we're going to do in this is I'm going to take a very simple chord progression. I'm going to keep playing it over and over and over again. And I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions about it. I'll put them up on the screen. And you don't have to be able to answer them all or anything, but it's just kind of like investigate this. Start to get comfortable like thinking about the chord progression in this way. Because every time I'm working with a student and they're trying to figure out a chord progression, they're just guessing. Oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? You know, oh, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. That's not the way you're going to figure out a chord progression. So the first thing is you got to have like an understanding of what it's doing. Just like listening to it and going, oh yeah, here, this is like, it's resolved here. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. That stuff is really, really important. A big spoiler here, some of the tricks I'm going to give you. One is that you want to start guessing, then checking. So it's bad practice to constantly guess, like just hit notes on your instrument because you're not using your ears, right? If you hit one note, you're like, okay, well, the note I'm looking for is higher, lower, like guess how much higher, 2 frets higher, 4 frets higher, you know, like start, like make a guess first before you touch your instrument. And if you're doing that constantly, you develop a lot quicker than if you're just, what is it, frantically. The other thing is singing notes, singing melodies. Chords are just kind of like a scaffolding for melodies. So melodies are much, much easier to figure out. If I have a melody that's like da, da, dee, da, dum, right? I can go, okay, well, da, that's actually the note. Da, here it is, right? I like da, it's higher than that. Da, da, oh, it goes up, right? Da, da, da. So I'm singing flat, da, da. You know, that's so much easier. So part of this exercise is going to be trying to sing little melodies on top of the chords. Because if you can figure out a melody, you can start figuring out the chords. Okay, so here's my simple chord progression. I'm going to play it and then I'm going to ask some questions about it. And you can do this with as hard a chord progressions as you want. Okay, here we go. Oh, sorry, no. So maybe you've already figured it out. That's okay. Well, let's get into the questions. So the first thing is, where's the beat? Where are you feeling the beat? Right? There's a couple right answers. Once you've found where you feel the beat, like how are those beats grouped? Are they grouped in 2s, 3s? It can only be 2s or 3s. Well, normally we beat group beats in 3/4 or 4/4. Right, so before is just 2 2s. Right? When does it repeat? Where's the repeat marking on this? Right, that's really important to figure out. Okay, and now how often do the chords change? Right? And when do they change? Can you tell me right away? Do you hear it? Are you really confident with it? How many unique chords are there? Right? Do some of them repeat? Right? That's important questions. Okay, now, when does it feel resolved? When are we like back home and where would I end this chord progression, right? Because we have generally, and sometimes this can be subjective, you know, some chord progressions are very subjective, but normally we have a chord that kind of feels like, oh yeah, this is the end of the song. This is where I would end it. Right? And when you get to that chord, can you try to sing a note? I'm not going to stop playing right now, but often I would pause and stop playing and like, you could do that. Just sing a note on the chord that feels like the most resolved. And if you can find that note, well, that's going to tell you a lot of information about the chord that's being played there. often that's the root of the chord. Okay, now into the kind of meat of this chord functions. Oops. I want you to think about what the chord functions are. Now, there's a lot of technical terms around chord functions, you know, dominance, subdominance, tonic, you know, or like secondary dominance, the 5 of the 5, you know, the 5 of the 2, like that sort of thing is all function. But the best way I think to think about it is, we know where that resolved chord is, or hopefully we know where the resolved chord is. That's our home, right? When we move somewhere else, we're going somewhere else, right? So that next chord, it's not home. But how would you classify it? Is it like a friend's house? It's like, oh yeah, sometime I'm gonna have to go home, but you know, I feel pretty comfortable here. Or is it, I don't know, a busy street and it's really loud and annoying, you just want to get home really quick, you know? That's our function. You could also think about it as like kind of a color. Alright, these chords can give us colors. So think about when those chords change, like do they feel comfortable or not so comfortable, right? Okay, now, is this chord progression major or minor? If you've never done this before, just take a wild guess, right? And then when you check and you figure it out, you can kind of go, oh, that's what this sort of chord progression sounds like. And chord progressions can start major and end minor or whatnot. And each chord, you could have a major chord progression that has minor chords in it. So you can ask yourself, are the chords that I'm playing in here, like maybe it's a major chord progression, but some of the chords are minor, you know? It's just about guessing. Okay, now the next thing I'll say is, I want you to think about a melody. We tried to sing one note on the main chord. I want you to come up with what's called a scaffolding melody, right? So I want you to sing one note per chord, only singing a note when the chord happens. And if it doesn't sound good, just move it up or down to the note that makes the most sense. So for example, da, that note sounds pretty good, da, that note still sounds good on this chord, da, it wants to go up, da, and it wants to go back down. So now I've got this little scaffolding melody, da, 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 da. Okay? Last thing I'll just say is, if I tell you what that first chord is, it's a G, surprise, surprise on the banjo, can you guess what all the rest of the chords are? Right? And before you try to figure it out, guess it. Now, let's take a look at that scaffolding melody I had. Da, 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 da. So I'm going to find that first note. Da. Okay, well, that's not it. I'll move it somewhere and see if it's getting closer further. Ba. I'm getting closer. Ba. There it is. So that's a G. Da. This is the open G string. So da, da. The second one's the same. Da, da. And then it went da. So that's going higher. I'm going to guess 2 frets higher. Da. Because it's not. Ba, you know, it's just da, da. It's a step. Da, da. Yeah, it's... And then we go back down. Da. Okay. So I've got that melody. Well, I can like literally think about... This is something maybe people don't understand is when you sing a melody on a chord, that is a note of the chord. Even if it's a note that I'm not playing on the banjo, if I'm singing it, the audience is hearing it. It's part of the chord. That's part of the chord. So like by definition, it's part of the chord and it sounds good. So since we're dealing with triads, that G chord can really only belong to 3 major chords or 3 minor chords, right? So I can kind of go, okay, well, it's a G note. Well, what chords do I know that have that? Like have that in their shape, right? C chord, a C minor chord, a G chord, you know, I guess like an F sus9, like, but so I can guess with those. And that G chord, oh, that sounds about right, right? Da, right? And when the next chord happened, well, it's probably one of those other chords that I was saying, like, ba. Now, what about when I go to this, that A note? Well, I can think about chords that have an A note, maybe an F. Da, that doesn't sound right. Da, nope, but it would work, or you could reharmonize it that way. Ba, da, da. So that sounds pretty right, although it's not the right chord I was playing. So that was a D chord. Well, you know, if you're a banjo player, you know how to play a D chord, and you know how to play a D7 chord, which is what I was doing, right? Which is often when you go to that D chord, you play D7 instead, just because it sounds a little smoother on the banjo. So that's that D chord, da, and it resolved to the G, right? So that was our chord progression. It was just G, C, G, D. There we go. Let's go through the list really quickly. Like, where was the beat? Well, it's very obvious that I'm going bum, 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 bum. So the beat can be here. You could also have been feeling a beat like this. That's totally okay. Either are kind of like right answers. Now, what's the groupings of it? So you could either think 1, 2, 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I would put this down as being in 4/4. Okay. Now, repeating. When does the chord progression repeat? Repeats there. Right? How often do the chords change? Well, that's one time. That's another time. And then that time. So 3 times. How many unique chords are there? Well, the first and the last are the same. So, yeah, that's 3 chords. When does it feel resolved? Well, this one is pretty clearly, sounds to me like it starts out resolved, then we go somewhere, then we go somewhere else, and then we come back, right? Talking about the chord functions, right? That was the chord functions, right? We felt we were like at home, and then we went somewhere, and then we went somewhere maybe a little more uncomfortable, and then we came back home. So let's talk about the actual theoretical names we give these, right? So with Nashville numbers and most common like practice is numbering. So in the key of G, this is in the key of G. G is 1, right? So our first chord, the home chord is 1. Whatever the home chord is, that's 1 now, right? So C, if we count up the musical alphabet, G, there's no H. So G, A, B, C. C is the 4 chord. So that's the 4 chord. And then the D, G, A, B, C, D is the 5 chord. And then 1. So it's 1, 4, 5, 1, right? And the 4 chord is, if we're talking in classical terms, the 1 is tonic, the 4 is a subdominant, and the 5 is the dominant chord. And that's maybe clear some, like we can kind of put all the chords you could possibly have in those 3 categories, right? It either feels like it's at home, it feels like or it feels like someplace that wants to push us towards home, which is the dominant chord. Dominant sounds are ones that like want to be resolved. And then subdominants are kind of like, yeah, they don't need to really be resolved right now, probably at some point. So you kind of have these 3 big categories you can put chords into. So when you're listening to tunes, think about that. Don't think about what is this exact chord. I mean, you can get there, but it's often nice to think, okay, this chord here, does it feel like it's kind of like a chill place that we can stay on, or does it feel like, oh, just get back home? And how strong is that feeling? Each chord has their own kind of version of that. Okay? Now, let's talk really quickly about these melodies, singing and playing the melodies. So this kind of shell melody where you sing one note on each chord is a really, really useful skill. And it's not only useful for figuring out chords, right, or coming up with your own chords, or like figuring out a song, right? Like you can use these to help you improvise, particularly with something that is like a chord progression that you're having a hard time with. Figure out a really simple shell melody and kind of improvise around it, because then you can start to hear the chords that are being played in the way you're playing by just having a very simple melody like that, right? So I'm going to give you some assignments now. So the first assignment here is I want you to try to come up with a couple shell melodies for that. Just very simple melodies. There's a couple different options, so try to come up with some lines, and they could kind of continue up and continue down or whatever it is. Try experimenting around with that. Then I want you to try to come up with your own chord progressions and try to come up with melodies on them. Try recording them. Everyone's got a phone now that has a nice recorder in there. Record something and then try to sing a shell melody, or if you really feel uncomfortable singing, you can just try to play it on your instrument. But I do think that with stuff like this, it's really nice to like be able to go, that's the note, and then you can hold it in your head and you can find it on your instrument. So try figuring out, like, come up with your own chord progressions, try to come up with your own little melodies that fit inside of them. Then the next step is just listen to some tunes this week. Listen to some songs and try to do this sort of analytical thing. Where's the beat? How are the beats grouped? What is the resolved chord? What's our home chord? When do the chords change? And like, how does each one of them feel in that? And if you're doing that regularly, you become a lot better at hearing what's going on with chords and how chords change. I think too many people get caught up in like, what's this chord? What's that chord? It's not like, it's like, oh, there's just a slice of this song and it's a whatever chord. You know, like the chords have functions. And if you're feeling and understanding the functions of how they are on the song, it becomes so much more intuitive, and it's actually music making and music feeling, right? And there's even times where like, if I'm playing in a jam or something and I guess the chord because it feels like a dominant function, and someone else guesses but they play a different chord that also works in the same way, generally that doesn't sound so bad. You know, like on a recording, it's nice when people play the same chord, but like if you play the same chord function, and I mean this happens all the time. Lots of times I'm playing a song and a D chord comes up and I play like, oh well, you know what, I can get the same sort of idea out of an F chord, so I'll do a little solo thing on an F chord. Okay, so that's the assignments. So again, coming up with these melodies, recording some progressions, trying to come up with your own shell melodies, and then listening to songs and going through this kind of list. Now, for further studies, so I'll put this in. So one is like record yourself doing all sorts of chord progressions. Try to take chord progressions of, like, let's say you figure out a song or there's a song you like, you know. Try to think about what those chords are inside of that and try to use those chords, right? So it could be just even one chord. Like, let's say you really like, you know, that F chord. Well, what is that? What is that F chord? Well, if we're playing in the key of G, that F is, it's the flat 7, right? It's just 2 frets below. So if I'm playing in C, what would that chord be? Well, it's whatever 2 frets below C is. It's a B flat, right? So like record yourself doing, like, I like that sound. So record yourself doing stuff with that and coming up with ideas, right? So you really get that sound of like, oh, that's that flat 7. I think people often in bluegrass communities refer to that as like a modal sound. When you have like a major song with a flat 7. Like, that's another way of in too. It's like, oh, this sounds modal. It sounds like there's a flat 7 in it where this major minor mixing. Then the next step is transposition, right? Like, so if you have a chord progression that you like, try to put it in all sorts of different keys. And that's a little bit of work, but when you start to learn that, like, oh, okay, these chord progressions aren't about the individual chords, they're about the kind of progression of it, like, and transposing, like putting something from the key of G into the key of C, right? So that progression, 1, 4, 5, 1, like hearing that in different chord progressions and understanding that that's that same story, that's that same scaffolding, really starts to help you with this. All right, yeah, I'm going to let it sit there. I hope that sorry, there's something weird there. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did enjoy it, please consider supporting me on Patreon or just leave a message to tell me that this was an interesting lesson and you'd like to see more stuff like this. All right, till later.